I received a letter from someone, not a letter, but a communication from someone, and he said he was denied boarding on an American Airlines flight to the Philippines. Why was he denied? He was traveling December 7th. Now he moved the date to December 9, and he was concerned that same thing may happen comes December 9th. December 9th is going to be 2 days from now. Today is December 27th. I mean December 7th. So that's what we're going to talk about, and I'll share with you what I think happened and why a passport is important. Stay with me. For you to appreciate what I'm talking about, I think you should see the nature of the communication that was sent to me. He or she was seeking assistance on how this could possibly be avoided. Why am I being deprived from boarding the plane going to the Philippines? Now, I'm going to read this. This is in Tagalog, but in a nutshell, for those people who do not speak Tagalog, he's basically saying that he boarded a plane, or he tried to board a plane on December 7th, and he was denied because he did not have a Philippine passport. And he went to the consulate. The consulate said, oh yeah, you should be able to just show them your dual citizenship ID. And that is the problem he has. So he's going to try again on December 9th. And he's concerned that same thing may happen. So let's go ahead and read the letter, okay? Or the communication. Vlogger Grandpa, humihingi po ako ng tulong at kung anong gagawin ko sa pag-uwi ng Pinas. Taga Cebu po ako at dapat makauwi na sana ako sa Pinas noong December 4th. I guess I'm wrong. It's December 4th, not December 7th. I am dual citizen from Arizona. Noong nag-check-in ako sa airlines ko, pinakita ko ang U.S. passport ko, pero hinanapan ako ng Filipino passport na matagal na expired. Hindi ako pinayagang sumakay sa American Airlines dahil expired daw ang passport ko, so pinakitaan ko sila ng 3 documents ko sa dual pero hindi nila tinanggap. Dahil required daw sila, sumunod lang daw sila sa rules ng Pinas. Kahapon December 4th, itong taon, tumawag ako sa Philippine Consulate sa Los Angeles. At sabi ng consulate sa akin ay ang kailangan ko lang ipakita is yung documents ko sa dual. I apologize, I'm having difficulty reading Tagalog, but I'm trying. At sabi niya sa akin, dapat wala daw problema kung wala akong passport basta meron akong ipakita na proof ng dual ako. Advice niya sa akin ay maghintay daw ako nitong December 7. Kasi lifted daw ang regulation sa Pinas at lahat na daw pwede nang umalis na walang visa papasok pang Pinas at pati daw dual ay pwede basta ipakita lang ang dokumento na passport daw. So ngayon, nakarebook na ako uli sa American Airlines sa December 9. Paano po yan? Baka ma-deny na naman ang flight ko. At paano na malaman na nakalifted na ang Pinas after December 7? Sana naman nakarecord na sa mga airlines ito para maibsan ang problema, siguro maiwasan, ibig sabihin nun, ng kagaya ko. I had to catch my flight in Phoenix in December 9th. And that's 4-hour drive from Sierra Vista. So he lives in Sierra Vista. He drives 4 hours to get to Phoenix and then he was denied boarding. Baka masayang lang ang pag-drive namin tapos babalik din ako. Please tell me what we should do. Thank you po. So, before December 7th, he tried to fly, and at that time, only Filipino citizens were allowed. Only Filipino citizens were allowed. Then they changed that to former Filipinos are now allowed. And then they clarify that by saying even foreign spouses and children of Filipinos are now going to be allowed. That's why they said go back on December 7th, and as a former Filipino, you will be accepted. Yeah, because he said he has dual certificates, so he has U.S. passport and he has dual, but he does not have a Philippine passport. His Philippine passport is the expired one, which is good as an evidence that he used to be a Filipino. Okay, but let's see. It says here, but even before December 7th, this is my observation now, even before December 7th, dual citizens are allowed and there is no need for Philippine passport, just the 3-page dual citizenship paper. Let me show you the flight path that I'm thinking. Going to the Philippines from New York, let's say, from Los Angeles, say, from Chicago, going straight to the Philippines. If you have a straight flight, you're likely not to have a problem because the people at the counter in Los Angeles, in New York, in Chicago, on these flights that are going directly to the Philippines are probably knowledgeable as to what Philippines need. All right? Follow me so far? So if you have a direct flight, they know that dual citizen dual citizen ID is okay, blah, blah, blah. The problem is very few people are taking direct flights, either because there are not too many of them. Usually there is a layover, but there are some, okay? And it's also cheaper to get a flight that has a stopover somewhere. And therefore, a lot of people are coming from other states, picking up another flight that goes straight to the Philippines. So let's say now, you're flying from Orlando. You have to stop by New York, then to the Philippines. Somebody else coming from Philadelphia stops in New York, goes to the Philippines. Somebody comes from Ohio, goes to New York. And same thing in Los Angeles. There are various people here, okay, who are flying to the Philippines, but they will have to stop in this main hub. The people in the main hub, although they're knowledgeable as to the requirements in the Philippines or to what is allowed, the people on this airport terminal are not knowledgeable. All they know is if you're going to the Philippines, you need to have a passport, you need to have a visa, you need to have this or that, okay? So if you have a visa, no problem. If you have a Philippine passport, of course you don't need a visa. That's all they know. And you cannot expect them to know what the rules are in the flight to the Philippines because the people here could be going to another states, could be going to another country. There are many, many different kinds of rules. Now, a passport is a standard document. I have not heard a country yet where there is no passport required. I was surprised when Philippines says, oh, you don't need a passport, we'll honor your ID. Good for them. Once you're in the Philippines, the problem is before you get to the Philippines, you're flying from somewhere. If you're flying from here where there are direct flights, they probably know. Okay, they should because they're taking flights going to the Philippines, so they should know the rules. But the people in these terminals don't necessarily know. Again, it's because what we're doing using the ID is not common. What is common is you have a passport to enter the country, or if you do not have a passport, you want to use American, you have to have a visa to get to the Philippines. That, I think, is what happened. That is the reason why, although, and he is correct that they should accept this, they did not know. They did not know. So, anyway, what I suggested to him or her, I can't remember, is I sent them a link that says it's okay to use the ID. And I said, if I were you, I will go to the American Airline office, show it to them, make sure that they agree with you, yeah, it's okay, and ask for a letter from them saying, please accept this individual because the rules are blah, blah, blah. All right? Because when you get to the terminal, that is not the time when you should be arguing, when the people are very busy trying to check in a lot of people. And again, as I said, most of those people, not all, but most of them, are not aware of this, except for the ones that are going straight to the Philippines with no layover. All right. Now, let's continue on with the discussion. Now, what I'm about to say is very controversial. Well, somewhat controversial, only because I got a lot of feedback, a lot of comments on my videos saying, oh gee, why do we need a passport? Why do they have to treat us like this? Why do they have to treat us like that? You need to understand, first of all, I'm going to ask you one simple question. When you left the Philippines, the first time you left the Philippines, what did you have? Philippine passport. Why do you need Philippine passport? Because your U.S. visa, whether it's tourist visa, immigrant visa, or whatnot, is tied into the passport test. So they look at your document to make sure you can enter the country you're going, and your Philippine passport says you came from the Philippines and you're a Filipino citizen, and you also need this to come back to the Philippines, because that is the main entry that you will need, the main entry document that you will need. Okay? Philippine passport. Now you came to the U.S. You went to the U.S., became a U.S. citizen, and obviously you will need to have a U.S. passport, because now you're no longer a Filipino, you are an American. And when you travel, you carry this just like you used to carry this. Okay? But now you became dual. You need to have two passports. Two passports. Now, Philippines was being generous by giving you the option or privilege to just use the dual citizenship identification letter. Nice of them. Because that means when you get to the Philippines, you will have no problem. Even if you do not have a passport, you'll be able to get in. But what if you're going to other countries? Or what if the same thing like this happens to you? You're checking in with an airline that's not going to the Philippines, but going somewhere else before you get to the Philippines. And they don't know that. You're in trouble. You are going to be in trouble. You are absolutely correct that the document you have is sufficient, but it doesn't matter whether you're correct or not. The fact is, you're going to be stranded. You're going to be held back. They will not let you board the plane. So that is the problem. So let's talk a little bit about what passport is and what visa is, okay? Nine reasons why everybody needs a passport. A passport is a travel document usually issued by a country's government to its citizen that certifies the identity and nationality of its holder primarily for the purpose of international travel. A visa is a conditional authorization granted by a territory to a foreigner, allowing them to enter, remain within, or leave that territory. So, you left the Philippines with a passport that certifies that you are Filipino. Then you got a visa in the United States that allows you to enter the United States. Now, U.S. territories like Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, American Samoa, Guam, and other Northern Mariana Islands don't require valid U.S. passport, but you should have your valid government-issued ID with you. Now, these are, although they're not states in the United States, they are U.S. territories, okay? So, they're U.S. territories, and that's the only reason you can bring valid ID with you. A passport is used to verify one's country of citizenship. If traveling outside of your country, it is issued to regain entry into your country of citizenship. Philippines is saying, oh, we'll be nice because I know it's not easy for you to get a passport, and for some people it's valid, okay? Some people will say, gee, I have to fly from this place to that place to get a passport. It's not easy, okay? For some people, like me, for example, well, it's 2 hours away, but it's drivable. So I drive 2 hours, get my passport. But for some people, they have to fly. And that's not easy. That is why I suggest, if it is not easy, when you get to the Philippines, hopefully you'll be there not only for 1 week, but something longer than that, apply for a passport right away. And the other thing is, the first time I had a passport, I just had it renewed last October, okay? Last time it was only 5 years. Now it's 10 years. So that will sort of alleviate the pain of getting a passport. It only costs $60 And for 10 years, that means $6 a year you wind up spending. It's nothing, okay? But I know that the problem is not the cost, but it's getting in and out of the Philippine consulate because they're far. For some people, they're far, okay? But for some, it's okay. Now, reasons everybody need to have a passport. It's a legal ID. If you lose your driver's license, your passport serves as a legal photo ID for any situation that might require one. Ask anybody, they know what a passport is, okay? But they don't know what a dual citizenship certification is. In fact, I never knew until I became a dual citizen. Adoptions. If you plan to adopt a child from another country, you cannot visit or pick up the child from their country without a valid passport. Resting easier. For instance, if there is an emergency and a family member or friend needs your help, you know that you already have a documentation you need to board a plane or wherever they are. And usually when you have a passport, if you can get a plane, you can get a reservation, you can fly, you don't need a visa, okay? Because that's a guarantee that you'll be able to get in. Well, with the exception of the COVID right now, okay? New job paperwork. A passport is one of the best documents for establishing your identity and employment eligibility. Well, for most retired people, of course, you don't need that. Child protection. Once a passport has been issued, no one can legally obtain another passport for that same child, and he or she can't be taken out of the country without the passport you legally obtained. So once you got a passport for your child, that's it. If somehow he was kidnapped, they cannot get him a passport because he is already registered under your name or under his name as you as the parent, okay? Process is streamlining. Obtaining a visa is a separate process. So if you already have your passport, there's less paperwork to worry about. But if you have to wait at least 6 weeks to get a passport and then have to apply for a visa, it could be a very long wait. And that's another thing, by the way. For example, usually you have permit to enter anytime, and we got used to that. But because of COVID, now they have restrictions. You cannot get in unless you're a citizen of the Philippines. Then you're faced with that problem. Domestic flights may require one. If you plan to travel by plane, even if it's domestic flight within the United States, you will need a passport to board. Starting in 2018, if your state driver's license, in 2008, if your state driver's license doesn't meet federal requirements. I don't know. I don't know if that's already in effect. It says 2018, but I always travel, and I think my wife, I always show the U.S. passport. And of course, if you already have a U.S. passport, you don't need a Philippine passport. But it's a darn good document to identify who you are, okay? But my wife, I don't know. I think she's still showing driver's license, unless she has one of those enhanced driver's license. Going to Canada. If you want to travel between the United States, Mexico, or Canada, you do need a passport, except that if you reside in a state that issues enhanced driver's license, your license is accepted as documentation for travel to and from these neighboring countries. So there is a so-called enhanced driver's license now. You don't have to bring your U.S. passport. Now, we're talking U.S. passport here. But Philippine passport, you can also present if Filipinos, if holders of Philippine passport are allowed in Mexico and Canada without a visa, but they do, okay? They do. But for U.S. citizens, you just need a passport. Traveling for work. Although you may not be planning a leisure trip out of the United States, if you're up for job promotion, that includes travel. So you also use it for traveling. A valid passport in your possession is a point in your favor. And this is another thing, by the way. If you only go home on holidays, or if you will go back to the Philippines and not ever come back to the U.S., well, you don't really need it unless you are going to travel outside of the Philippines. So those are decisions you will have to make. But if you only go once a year, maybe the ID is fine, and you take the risk of you not being allowed to board unless you're in a place where you can get direct flights, okay? Or you take Philippine Airlines, for example. Here is another thing. This is no longer part of the 9 reasons. This is now another reason why I think Philippines will eventually require you to have a passport. Do you remember in one of my vlogs when I said there is a page, it says you can go to the Philippines using a dual citizenship ID, but when you come back to the States or when you get out of the Philippines, you will be required to have a passport. Then they denied that. Nobody knew about it. This is advisory number 30 at the New York consulate. And by the way, I saw it again. It's still there. I thought they already removed it because they got so many complaints after I published it. And most of the consulates was not even aware of it. And then eventually even New York is saying, oh, no, you don't really need it. Okay, but it is there and it's still there. Okay, so why is it there? I think there is a plan. At some point in the future, they will stop using this ID, which I think they should, because we're the only country that allows that. You have to have a passport. I know, if you disagree with me, that's fine. That's fine. Here, upon reacquisition of Philippine citizen, am I required to apply for a Philippine passport? This is according to the consulate in the Philippines. Application for a Philippine passport is not a requirement. However, it is strongly recommended. And don't take that for granted, because this is what happened. They only recommended it. That's what happened. Okay? It is strongly recommended that you apply for a Philippine passport immediately after your reacquisition of Philippine citizenship. A passport serves as evidence of citizenship and is easier to carry around with you than your identification certificate. Also, a Philippine passport would make it easier to travel to and from the Philippines. The Philippine passport can be presented together with your U.S. passport in the Philippines to exempt you from paying immigration fees. If I were you, I would really strongly recommend getting a Philippine passport. If you're not dual, then fine, you don't need it. But if you're dual, come on. Part of being a citizen is having a Philippine passport. So don't complain. Don't complain about that. Besides, it's not a right to always use the ID certificate. Okay? We call it a right, call it any label you want. But if the airline is not going to let you in, that's too bad. You want to sue the airline? Fine. You know, I would rather spend $60 on a passport good for 10 years than go through that trouble. Now, for some people, there's difficulty getting that because they are that close to the Philippine consulate. Well, when you get to the Philippines, as soon as you get to the Philippines, apply for one. Okay? Then hopefully you are still there by the time they finish processing and send it to you. Then you can sleep and rest easy, because next time you travel, this is especially true for people who are traveling maybe more than once a year, or maybe even those who are traveling only once a year. You know, that means over a 10-year period, you'll use it 10 times. And you won't have any problem. You don't have to take Philippine Airlines. You know, as I mentioned earlier, if you take Philippine Airlines, it probably will not be an issue because they know. But what if you want to save money and you want to go to use Asiana, EVA, blah, 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 or you want to get a flight that has a connection, okay, within the U.S. connection, they may not know the requirement, and you may be denied boarding. So hopefully this clarifies this matter. You are not required, but strongly suggested by me and by the consulate that you get one. All right, so hopefully, if not all, hopefully some of you will listen and do it. Thank you so much for watching, and please do share it with other people. If you like the video, please hit like, and I'll appreciate it if you subscribe in case you have not done so yet. Okay? Make it a great day.